Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Writer Showcase stream. This is going to be a fun one today. I've got some very talented people coming on. One Kaiju God is he's running a little bit late, but that's okay. First off, please welcome.
I'm back.
Yay! And please welcome to the stream.
Got a bit of an echo problem there.
Me or
It's been there since the start of the stream. So.
Oh, weird.
I'm not hearing an echo.
Odd.
No, wait, it's me.
Okay. Well, welcome to Neph Champion.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. This is gonna be fun. Yeah. So, in terms of order, so I think the best option today. I'm scary. Oh, you forgot to promote me. Oh, Zim, aren't you? Where? I thought you were on. You're supposed to be in here. Here, where art thou? I put the link in the thing so that you could come on the thing.
These are all very technical terms, by the way.
Yes, very
not
technical.
professional here.
Alrighty. One second.
Hello, all my Gigans.
Hello, my fellow Gigans.
You filthy, filthy space chickens, you.
I know.
Man, I'm just here for the realm.
Yeah. What's a thing?
Very technical term, that.
Well, you see, when a thingamabob and a doohickey love each other very much, they get certain urges and they do a special hug, and then they go down the hardware store and pick up the necessary equipment, and most of it happens downstairs in the basement. It's all very interesting, but you'll learn about that when you're older.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, in terms of the order, how shall we do it?
Well, let's see. Does anyone have something that's particularly short?
I have about 2,000 words.
I'm about the same, yeah.
Yeah, mine's a little over 2,000.
How about Simzilla, as he's the newcomer, can go first.
Oh wow, put me on the spot, why don't you?
Yes, I don't care.
Hazing.
And then we'll have Neph go second, Carl Sailor go third, and then Drake go fourth, Kaiju God go fifth, and if we have time for me, I'll be last.
Well, I don't actually have anything, so that.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did.
he's here for reading your thing.
Oh, okay.
So-
I thought it
Sorry.
was
Yeah.
moral
Sorry.
support.
Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. I thought you had a thing. Sorry, my bad. Okay, so that works out. Okay, so Zim, Neph, then Carl. But Zim, please, as this is your first time on Writer's Showcase, please introduce yourself. How you got into writing, and like what are some of your favorite genres? Tell us about yourself as a writer.
Okay, so I would say myself as a writer, I've always kind of enjoyed writing, but it was never something that became a passion of mine until later on in high school, where I started to really kind of get into reading a lot of sci-fi. And I really started looking at mostly stuff that I watched from television. So Star Wars books, Halo books, and then I started getting into Warhammer and Black Library and all that stuff. As well as I started reading fantasy, of course, Lord of the Rings being the obvious kind of go-to start, which I never finished the first time I actually tried to read it. And then when I got a little older, then I read through it again. So overall, that would be kind of where I've started. And then now, pursuing an English major and then a creative writing minor, writing has started to become something that's a little bit more important to me. And I've been working on a bunch of different stories at the moment. And I would say in terms of genre that I focus in primarily, it's mostly just sci-fi and fantasy, with currently sci-fi being the main thing I'm working on right now.
Nice. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A worthy beginning.
What was that?
A worthy beginning.
Thank you. So should I just start going into the story I'm showcasing today then?
Go for it. Yes.
Okay. So, the title is Troubling Precedent. It is going to be one of several short stories that I'm working to put into an anthology, hopefully at the end of next year. But this is the second of two so far done. You've read the first one, which I'm still editing. Well, this is the one I finished. Actually, it was right after the Framing Monsters stream that we did that I ended up finishing it. So
nice.
Yeah, I was kind of writing it in between like us talking, but it was after that where I finally finished it, and I'd come back to it after a while. So kind of just doing these streams helped me get back into the mood of just writing, because of course quarantine, despite having a lot more time, it was you still need to get motivated to do things.
Yeah, you do.
See, Nif's best friend because she understands my pain. But let's get into it. So, taking time to survey the limits of the creatures of my lost world and their traveling habits was important to help shape a full scientific analysis of why this evolutionary marvel exists and how far it expands. My duty has become tracking specimens and other species, mapping out foraging patterns, nesting sites, territorial boundaries, and the points of high fauna traffic. Several weeks ago, I had been trudging around northern Quebec and past one of the few roads that ended up snaking through this area. I found a damaged camera, only a few yards off from the road. The camera was of high quality. Whoever it belonged to was either wealthy or took recording and camera work seriously. But due to the caked on dirt and scratches, the device must have been sitting here for at least several days. Cleaning the camera, I found it had minimal damage, but replacing the battery required me to return to civilization, which of course took time, but it helped me restock some supplies. Connecting the camera to my own personal computer allowed me to access the raw footage left on the device. It started off with that of a young girl staring down at the camera and greeting and introducing herself as Jada. She then turned the camera to introduce her three friends. They were all younger women of various racial backgrounds and ages, and each carrying suitable equipment for at least a couple days of camping. I skipped forward through the footage, none of it was of any import. They had taken a car, driven up to some lake, I think it was called Albane. The lake is popular for fishing in the surrounding area. It's also used for camping, I'd say. But frankly, none of this interests me. I'm not sure why the camera was here in the first place, but I was determined to find out. I continued to skim through the footage, and they had begun hiking and then stopped to do some drinking. Of course, being someone who hiked a lot, I frankly thought the drinking was superfluous and pretty irresponsible, if you ask me. However, Jada was still recording, but it had come to nighttime, and I noticed something. Just a little ways off, only faintly, however, there was eyeshine. Of course, out in the wilderness, there's a lot of animals that produce eyeshine. Lynx, cougars, and black bears are all animals that produce it. But the way the eyes were positioned, I could tell that it extrapolated into a long, narrow snout, and it was in no way mammalian, if you could ask me. It stayed incredibly still, just out of the full illumination of the campfire, and within several bushes. From my estimate, I placed the height of the animal to be about 5 feet. A rather inebriated girl stumbled near the foliage, causing the animal to run into the dead of night. The scare it gave the group was short-lived as they returned to their festivities. However, the next day, it seemed something had disturbed them. Jada had begun filming in her tent, explaining that she was woken up by some crash or something, and there was an animal moving around the camp. Outside her tent, shadows outlined something extremely large, larger than a bear, frankly even larger than a moose. She slowly unzipped the tent, and to her surprise, what exactly was rummaging through her food was something she definitely wasn't expecting. It was large and quadrupedal, dark green speckled skin, and a brown underbelly. The back was lined with broad plates, which ran all the way down to its muscular tail that ended in 8 long conical spines. The proportionally small head was inside a plastic bag that was attached to a snapped tree branch. Most likely this is what had woken her. What was assailing the woman's food reserves was a Stegosaurus percutio, a large herbivorous reptile and one of 3 species of abscondosaurs that I had since documented in the local area. The name had come from a first encounter I'd had with one of these creatures. I had witnessed it first hitting a small tin roof, which was attached to one of the buildings I was living in. The area which I had been living in was an area across from one of the lakes they had actually been camping with originally. It is known as Nishikun. It's a ghost town, actually, and there's several abandoned buildings that are of okay condition, I guess. But they allow me to stay within the area and document local wildlife as I see fit. The animal continued to rummage through the woman's camps, shoving its snout into granola bars, cereal, and other food items they had in the bag. She turned the camera to one of her second friend's tents, who had poked her head out and muffled a scream. She waved her hand in front of the camera to let her know not to make any other noises, and then the animal turned its head to face her. It tilted its head in bewilderment, with a few snorts and grunts as it continued to advance on Jada's camp. She stifled her own gas and moved further into her tent as the animal dipped its head inside. It didn't really seem aggressive, as it were, but it tilted its head and then began to snack on something. What I had noticed was that Jada had left some food inside her tent. Once again, a rookie mistake in camping, but thankfully, this animal was far from aggressive. It continued to eat, and Jada tentatively held out her hand to pet the animal. It responded in a way that I could only imagine is similar to a horse. I have no experience with horses, but the animal just sort of let it do its thing, continued to eat while she stroked its head. After it had eaten what was left in her tent, it dipped out its head, and Jada began to follow. Everyone came out of their tents slowly, not to alarm the creature, as it continued to lumber around, and Jada, apparently very brave, continued to stroke the animal's head. It just kept doing what it did, and nothing more to it. "Emily, touch it," she said. Gina pointed her camera at her friend, who stood a few feet away, tentatively from the rest of the group. She tiptoed closer and began to touch one of its spines. "It feels kind of like sandpaper," she said, as she touched one of the broad plates, and the animal began to give a large grunt, and then swung its large tail. She gave a stifled scream, but, of course, thankfully, she wasn't hurt. The animal continued to eat until it finally moved away and into the large brush. What I could say without a shadow of a doubt is that this is a behavior I haven't seen before, but I'm thankful for the footage. But my big question is, why was the camera left here? And that's it.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Cool.
What a mystery.
Mm-hmm. I know someone said post-apocalyptic. No, it's not post-apocalyptic. Post-apocalyptic. Once I actually finish the first one again, I could probably do a narration for that so that you guys can get a better understanding of it. It's essentially just if dinosaurs were living up in Canada, out in the wilderness, no one really goes up there. So that's kind of the basis for the story.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like a
Cool.
dinosaur substitute for a bear attack.
Essentially, yeah, which does actually, because you guys had talked about what makes a good revenge story. So the third part of this that I'm writing about, you find out what happens to them, and then I have been working on a character archetype as well as a kind of revenge plot for what happens. So it's gonna be fun.
Why were they called abscondosaurs again?
Yeah, so they're not actually dinosaurs. They're hyper evolved lizards, actually. None of them look like traditional dinosaurs. There are at least two species that resemble what you would think an old dinosaur would look like, so tail dragging and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Like the one that you described, because that made me think of let's see which one. Not the stegosaur, but the one that has plates that look like spines rather than plates.
Yeah, it does resemble a stegosaur in a lot of ways, and abscondosaur was just a term that I wanted to use specifically because, of course, they're not real dinosaurs. Because Stegosaurus just means, or Stegosaurus Mercutio just means roof-riding battering ram.
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep all the terms kind of synonymous with actual science, and abscondosaur just means unknown reptile.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
That certainly makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought it was abscondosaur, like
Nope.
they escaped something, like they
Nope.
escaped extinction.
In a way, that actually is interesting. I should write that in, just as I never thought of it.
Abscond.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
It's definitely it's interesting to see how consider how those etymologies have changed over the intervening 2 millennia.
Yeah.
Because there's at least 4 different species that I'm working with. Because the one we've racing the kind of stegosaur looking one, then there was 2 that were in the original story, Arcanosaurus formidus and then Brontosolum ducus, which are like a classical bipedal T-Rex and a large long-necked dinosaur. And then the eye shine comes from a Vibroraptor, but we don't see those yet. And I don't want to spoil too much of what happens with the Vibroraptors too much.
Vibroraptor?
Yeah, Vibroraptors. Because they have large scales that line the sides of their tails, that when their tails shake, it creates this like vibrating, clackling noise, or like
a rattlesnake?
Like a rattlesnake, actually, yeah. But that's actually, it's ironically, the whole anthology is called Dark Corners and Secrets, and these stories only take up like maybe a fourth of it, really. And then the next set of stories don't even have anything to do with this.
Interesting.
But yeah, if you guys got any critiques or anything, I'd be more than happy, because I want to definitely get to working on improving this one as well.
Seems fairly simple.
Yeah, but simple's not bad either.
Yeah.
So
No, it's like just seeing, like I honestly don't know like what feedback I could give, since it seems as though just like simple like dinosaur interaction. I'm really interested to. Did I read the rest of this, or was this a different one?
This is a different one.
Okay. Okay. Well, I honestly don't have much to say. It's like it's an interesting idea of just basically having a dinosaur raccoon attack.
I certainly didn't see any problems overall.
Yeah, it's definitely a solid flash fiction.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
What about you, Drake?
It sounds like it's the start of a kaiju movie, or maybe it's just your avatar that makes me think that. It's like where they find the small little thing, and they find the much, 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 much bigger thing later.
I will actually say in my kaiju writing that philosophy does kind of ring true, but I would say that with my kaiju stuff, I do write my kaiju stuff a little differently than I would write this per se.
Yeah, it feels like it's ramping up to something else.
Yeah, it certainly does. So, is it my turn?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, so I'm going to be continuing from where I left off last week. So they are still in Erebus. They're not going to be for long, though. Okay, so in the end, Argo had dug out a few quests for everyone to do. Kirito decided that he was going to take the martial arts extra skill quest. And of course, Asuna had decided to go with him. Again, why could he not seem to get time to himself? It was only the disengaged auto emote that was stopping him from snapping at her, which would ruin the budding friendship between them. After Kirito and Asuna left with Argo in tow this time, Ruby and Koshin gathered up the three Kirito thought would rage quit, Yoko, Isamu, and Takako, grabbed Silica, and followed Kirito's lead. Erebus was not the place to be right now. There were more than just the one hut that had been there in the beta test when Kirito, Asuna, and Argo got to where the martial arts extra skill quest took place. Was this a village before? Argo-san. Kirito-sensei? Asuna asked as she looked around. Argo checked her original notes. No, there was just the one hut here, Argo replied as she started amending her notes. Let me note down the differences and fix the mistake in the guidebook before we attempt the quest, please. Sure, Argo, and while you do that, Asuna and I will start exploring so that we can find out what else is different, Kirito replied, looking to the other girl and getting a nod in return. We'll take care of this, Argo-san. Asuna agreed happily. Kirito-sensei, I'll go left if you go right. Kirito nodded. Sure. Thank God Asuna seemed to notice that he really needed some time alone. They split up to search the camp. It was Asuna who found the NPC in one of the other huts. Excuse me, sir. Ah, lass. We have been waiting for you, the old NPC said. Here to learn about martial arts? Yes, sir, Asuna agreed with a smile. I'm not the only one who wishes to learn. Then take me to the rest of your party, lass, the NPC said with a smile. Kirito-sensei, I found the NPC we were looking for, Asuna said when she found him. Wonderful, Kirito said with a small smile, said a small smile making its way onto his face. I take it you wish to learn martial arts as well, young man, the NPC asked. Yes, sir, Kirito replied. The NPC looked around. Did you not have another companion with you? He asked. Kirito nodded. Shall we go find Argo then? He asked, turning his attention to Asuna. Asuna nodded happily. I see you found the NPC we needed to talk to, Argo said with a grin. Yes, Argo, Kirito said. We did. The NPC smiled at them all, waiting for them to activate the quest. Sir, please teach us what you know, Kirito said, turning his attention back to the NPC. Teach us your art. Thank you so much for helping me get here, Connie, Ruby Net, Silica said cheerfully as they reached a different hut in the martial arts camp and went inside. Inside the hut, there was another non-player character waiting. So, Connie, what kind of quest is this? Silica asked, turning to Koshin. This is a gathering quest, Silica, Koshin replied. You'll need the trap dismantling skill, but you won't be fighting any mobs. Silica nodded slowly as she opened her menu and went to equip the trap dismantling skill to her fourth skill slot. Then she walked up to the concerned-looking non-player character. "Forgive me, traveler. I need a favor of you," the NPC said, sounding hopeful. "Tell me what you need," Silica replied, "and I'll see what I can do." The NPC led Silica to a window and had her look outside. There was a forest out there that hadn't been there when they'd arrived. "Poachers have come into our forests, and they're hunting all the animals in it," the NPC said with a sad sigh. "The forest is littered with all sorts of traps. The animals don't stand a chance. If we don't do anything, there won't be any animals left at all." "That would be too bad," Silica agreed, turning back to the NPC from the vision out the window. "What do I need to do?" "Please go out there and destroy their traps," the NPC replied. "But be careful not to get caught in one yourself. It has happened to a few of us." The NPC gave Silica a strained smile. "I'll be able to reward you decently. It's nothing fancy, but it'll be worth your while." Silica looked thoughtful for a moment. "All right, I'll do it." "Thank you," the NPC said. "I'm very grateful." Silica wiped her brow half an hour later. Finding each trap had been easy enough, but dismantling them was a bit different. She was not afraid to say that taking the traps apart was much harder than it looked. "No wonder Connie said to have the trap dismantling skill equipped. This is hard work." Not just that, but the traps were getting harder to dismantle safely. It was a good thing that there was only one trap left. Much more, and Silica could not be sure that she would be able to dismantle them. Especially not without the skill equipped. As Silica approached the last of the 8 traps, she heard the distressed cry of one of the animals of the forest. "I'd better hurry," Silica said as she rushed into the clearing and saw the large, greater feathery dragon with a front paw caught in the trap, trying to free itself. "Oh, you poor thing," Silica said quietly, reaching into her pouch for the bag of peanuts Coney had given her before she had taken the quest. "Here, let me help you," she said, placing a few peanuts in front of the light blue dragon, and waited for the dragon to take the bait before she started working on dismantling the trap. The greater feathery dragon whined quietly as it sniffed the peanuts and ate one delicately as it calmly watched Silica work to free it. The dragon leaned down and blew a lungful of air on Silica. Silica stiffened for a moment and waited to see what the dragon would do. Once she was sure the dragon would not do anything, Silica went back to dismantling the trap. When Silica finished dismantling the trap, the greater feathery dragon got up and slowly followed Silica back to the hut to get her reward. The dragon nudged Silica from behind gently, limping after the small player. "Did you manage to get rid of the traps?" the NPC asked Silica. "Yes," Silica replied with a smile. The greater feathery dragon stuck its head through the window, nuzzling Silica happily. "Ah, and made a friend as well." Silica blushed, laughing in embarrassment. "Here, adventurer, take this as a reward," the NPC said with a smile. "Thank you for protecting the animals of the forest." A window popped up in front of Silica, who smiled when she gained a level, and 3,000 core was added to her wallet. "I did it!" The greater feathery dragon crooned at Silica, and another window opened in front of her. Silica blinked in surprise. "You have tamed this greater feathery dragon. Would you like to give your new familiar a name? Yes? No?" Silica blinked down at the window for another moment. "A familiar?" The little girl looked up at the light blue dragon. "You remind me of my cat," she told the greater feathery dragon. I know exactly what to call you. Ruby's eyes widened when she saw the huge dragon following the beater's little sister like a puppy. I take it you managed to finish the quest, Silica. Yep, Silica agreed. This is Peanut, my new familiar. Isn't she great? Peanut is great. Koshin agreed with a huge smile. I'm glad you found her. He pointedly nudged Ruby. Right, Ruby? Right, Ruby managed, recovering herself. But part of her processing power was dedicated to wondering how the hell the greater dragon form got a tameable tag. Feeling confident enough to start leveling in the fields against the trembling ox and cows now? Ruby asked, clapping her hands together. Maybe? Silica asked, looking to still be a little nervous. Ruby met Koshin's eyes. I'm thinking Clanka. How about you, Coca? The petite blonde asked. That was my thought as well, Koshin replied with a nod. I'll go find them then, Ruby chirped happily. What did you need, Ruby-ta? Klein asked, turning to his tiny blonde friend. He and Ruby were watching Kirito and Asuna attacking a boulder. Silica is still not very comfortable playing the game, Ruby replied, sitting on one of the nigh indestructible boulders. I was hoping that you and Harry 1 would be willing to take Silica out to the field. Klein looked over at Harry, who grinned. Sure, we'll do it, Klein agreed. Thank you so much, Clanka! Ruby trilled as she jumped down from the boulder to tackle hug him. You are the pro of all bros! Harry snorted. Brah. Ruby turned and shook a finger at him. Bro! Brah implies douchebaggery. Klein and Harry looked at each other. Wow, Klein said, and I thought our language had nuance. Ruby smiled at the two. BT dubs. And she was off, presumably to go find Koshin and Silica. That girl is a one-woman tsunami, Harry noted. Just be glad she's ours, Klein said. Can you imagine an evil Ruby? Harry frowned. Would that be her, but, like, evil? Or would it be a calm, calculating ice queen? Klein patted his friend's back. The real question, Onisa, is would either leave us better off? The two looked at each other. We must never risk knowing, Harry said. Agreed. That's some pet, Stilita, Klein said as he looked up at Pina, who was curled around Silica, nuzzling the girl's hair. I know! Silica tickled under Pina's chin. She's just wonderful! She turned to the older player. So, are you going out into the field with me then, to help me level? That's what's planned, Klein agreed. Shall we get going? Silica nodded, scrambling onto Pina's back. Let's go! With Pina on my side, I'm ready for anything! I regret everything! Silica yelled as Pina flew low to the ground, fleeing from one of the trembling oxen that Silica had somehow managed to draw the aggro for. Keep running! Klein called back. The entire group was getting closer to where Kirito and Asuna, the leaders of the beaters, were still trying to complete their quest. Oi, Kirito, Asuna-san, coming through? Harry 1 hollered, catching Kirito and Asuna's attention. Kirito turned in their direction, and, noticing the trembling oxen, lunged at Asuna, pushing them both out of the way and rolling over each other for a few feet. The trembling oxen roared as it charged through the area, destroying one of the boulders, causing the ink whiskers on Kirito and Asuna's cheeks to disappear. The mob turned around and charged, only this time Pina met it head-on, tearing into the oxen's neck, defeating it. See? Silica said, patting the dragon's head. I knew Pina had it! She was running too, Klein began as the dragon landed, and then got knocked over by Pina's tail. Oi! Bro, Harry chided, patting the feathery dragon's side. It was tactical. Right, Klein agreed from his prone position. Tactics. See, sweetie? Silica crooned. Harry Senpai gets us. Pina let out a happy little huff. I said help her level up, Kirito managed, as he helped Asuna up. Not tame an animal I'm pretty sure wasn't initially tameable. Asuna looked at him. Bidders make the rules. How is her having a dragon bad? Stop interrupting my panic with sense. Hey guys, Argo called. Check out what that mob uncovered. Silica had Pina trot over, following Klein, Kirito, and Asuna to what looked like a cave large enough for even Pina to fit in. Well, shall we check out what's inside? Kirito asked, looking at the assembled group. Well, what do we have to lose? Asuna asked reasonably. Nothing, Ruby replied, but we have everything to gain. Koshin nodded. I say we go. Cautiously, the group made their way into the cave. And that's my section finished.
Okay, nice. I really like the dialogue. I think is one of your big strong suits.
Thank you.
Yeah. I feel like all of the characters are very well defined, especially Ruby and the small kid.
Silica?
Silica? Yeah.
Silica, yeah. You know,
Is
I've
this
never...
between? Were you trying to make it like consistent with the show's story, or is this like going in its own direction? Because I'm still binging the rest of the other streams that you've done, where you've explained it.
This is going to, basically follow the show. Well, at this point, it's following the progressive light novels.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So this happens between the second episode and the third episode.
Okay, because I know I have up to progressive, I think 7? I'm checking right now. Yep, I have up to 7. Okay, yeah.
They're on the second floor, and this takes place during the Whiskers side story.
Got you. Yeah, that's why I was like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Like that whole story arc. Okay. Yep.
Alrighty.
Because I'm thinking, I'm like, wait, did Kirito? I don't remember him ever seeing Silica tame Pina, but again,
no.
liberties.
Yeah, this is different because I have the characters I want to use. I have the characters I want to use, and I kind of have to use them if I want them to, grow as characters.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, no, I like it so far. I would have to say you capture the characters really well, which sometimes fan fiction writers don't always do, but I appreciate it when they're able to like make characters grow, but still keep them pretty consistent to how they've been portrayed in the official media.
Yeah, and I've made a big change already. Pina is actually supposed to be a small cat-sized dragon.
Yeah, because I'm like,
decided,
great.
Yeah,
I'm like, I thought Pina was like tiny as fuck.
Yeah, her canon designation is petite feathery dragon. I decided, well, why not make Pina big enough for her to ride?
She's a dragon rider now.
Yeah.
And now Dun's immediately interested.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, especially since mine, I think, is one of my favorite fights that I've put to screen because it's kind of a mixture of a bunch of elements. It's a dragon fight in the sky, and a like on the ground armies fighting against each other in a very carefully choreographed battle. Which
And yeah, you heard right, Count Valerian.
Count
Yeah,
Valerian has
he
tatters.
did actually say that. And that's
Yeah.
not the only time he's going to be saying something like that either.
Well, I have to say there needs to be more Balls Deep 69. And I think Neph's the only one who's gonna get Neph's the only one who's gonna get that joke probably.
All right.
Oh,
I
there you
understand
go.
that reference.
There you
Alright.
go. Hey. More weed-tasticness.
I get the reference too. And my beta reader, who is helping me a whole lot and is probably could probably consider to be more of a co-author for this one, leans toward just slightly towards everyone's abridged version. Not all the way,
Shut up.
obviously.
Here I have power.
Yeah.
It's a beta and a reader. A beater.
Alrighty.
No,
we have
you are
a-
breeder.
We have
There's
another.
a difference between the D and the T. A beater.
Oh, true.
Beads in
our
places.
Our
There-
final guest just arrived.
Oh,
Nice.
there you go.
Hey.
Welcome,
Hey,
Kaiju
my
God.
massive, what's going
Hello,
on?
Kaiju.
I just realized
What's
I
up,
have the right
guys?
Godzilla to blow off my head, so hey,
Oh,
raise the
yeah.
Gaigan.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
Zilla had the Gaigan entrance. Kaiju got it, the Godzilla reference.
That'd be actually funny if I gave him the Godzilla entrance that happens right after that scene. That would make that even better. But
Wait, which Gaigan entrance do you get?
the Final Wars one.
Okay, so you get the good one.
Yeah, no, it's right up. Nay, no, don't you dare to 72. I will find you.
And I will kill you.
I will
You
find
cannot-
you.
you ca- you-
I will
you cannot-
buzzsaw your face.
You cannot kill what is already dead.
I will raise
That
it
is
from the
not
dead
dead,
and I will
which
kill it
they
again.
I, and with
Alrighty.
strange eons, even death may die.
Nice. Alrighty, I believe it is Carl Sailor's turn, and then Kaiju God will go, and then we will read my quite large epic. In literal terms, it's quite a bit, but hopefully
Okay.
it will be fun.
Okay, this is a selection from my book, The Gates of Dawn. It's a particular favorite of mine because I really got the world building for the guys who are sort of taking the antagonist spot, and we'll see a bit more of their culture and a little bit of them in a bit. So here we go. In the west, the setting sun splashed red light all over the underside of the clouds. It was the kind of scene that lasted only a few minutes until the last rays of daylight winked out beyond the horizon. A cool breeze wafting through the mountains carried the aroma of the great northern forest and ran its fingers through the thick black hair of the man trudging up the slope. If there was any beauty in the scene, it was lost on Dagon. He hated this land and everyone in it. Were it left to him, he would rather be in the Somme at Var, bringing wisdom and civilization to the lives of the savages. Or maybe in Illyria. There was still plenty of work to be done in Illyria, pacifying the population and breaking them of their barbaric ways. If the choice were his, Dagon would have even chosen guard duty at one of the frigid prison camps on Far Island. Anything but this mission. But he had his orders, direct from the elders of the First Land, and he knew his duty. Sometimes, Dagon reminded himself, one must plumb the depths of dishonor to defeat a greater foe. Dagon reached the lip of a low ridge and turned back to gaze upon the sunset. That was one thing he could appreciate about this land, the combination of the blood-red western sky and the brown mountain soil. Like the Mustai, the the banner of earth and blood that had carried Dagon and his comrades to victory time and again across the plains of Analeria. It was a welcome reminder that Hadvar would soon control all of this land. Dagon turned away from the sunset and slipped down into the valley toward the large shape hidden beneath the ragged camouflage net. It was a thing like a large boat, except made out of metal, not wood, and made to sail in the sky instead of on the ocean. Dagon shuddered at the thought. It was an unnatural thing, a blasphemous thing. Man was not meant to climb inside a metal box and fly about among the clouds. The enemy called them airships. Ordinarily, Dagon despised those nonsense words that people of this land strung together in mockery of the glorious first tongue. But in this case, he was content to use their language. Better to dirty my own mouth with their words, Dagon supposed, than to pollute the first tongue with a word to describe such mechanical abominations. The Saz-Dvar, those lands beyond the far eastern mountains that the locals called Aurora, were awash with all manner of wicked machines. Iron engines that lumbered along roads of steel, mechanical weavers that belched out cloth faster than 1,000,000 seamstresses could make it into clothes, vast webs of wires that reduced the glorious gift of language to simple electronic shrieks, and of course the hated airships. The machines had taken over the lives of the native people, cheapening the labor of their hands and corrupting the collective soul of their society. Time-honored traditions and knowledge passed down the generations had been sacrificed upon the altar of industrialization and the false progress of plenty. It was almost tragic. But that would all be remedied soon. Once the armies of the Saz-Dvar were broken in battle and their people subjugated, all of their infernal contraptions would be gathered up and melted down for scrap or cast into the deepest depths of the sea, and there would be no way for future generations to know that such vile devices had ever profaned their lands. They would be a people humbled at last, grateful to have been blessed with the gift of civilization. Well, the ones who survived, at least. Dagon slipped beneath the camouflage net and walked up a ramp into the cavernous interior of the airship. This vessel had belonged to some merchant before it had been purchased by Hadvar, through a proxy, of course. But now the only cargo it carried in its iron belly was a small squad of Hadvari troops and 2 heavy field guns with ammunition. Dagon climbed the ladder at the back of the cargo hold and stepped out into the metal corridor at the top of the ship. Rooms sprouted off from the other side of the narrow hallway as Dagon strode through the front of the ship, where the flight controls were situated. He paused for a moment to peer through one of the steel doors into a room where the Molsode sat, meditating in silence, clearing their minds and steeling their resolve for the coming battle. Dagon had never worked with one of the death squads before, but he had heard tales about them ever since he was a boy. The Molsode were the elite troops of Hadvar, superior in blood and training and in honor. It was their charge to lay down their lives in service to the elders of the First Land, and wherever they went, glory was sure to follow. Dagon pulled himself away from the death squad and continued on toward the bow. By the time this mission was done, he was sure to have a tale of his own to tell. As Dagon stepped into the control center, a local woman turned about in the seat that was supposed to be reserved for the captain. Her thin lips quirked into almost a smile, but her blue-green eyes never lost their disinterested gaze. "Anyone find us yet?" Dagon frowned. The woman's speech wasn't halting or stilted like most of her countrymen, but it was marred with an accent. Some of the younger soldiers might have found her exotic, and Dagon had to admit there was a certain foreignness about the woman that was intriguing, much in the same way that an undiscovered tribe of barbarians might have liked study. However, any sexual attraction Dagon might have felt was more than offset by her appearance. Women were not supposed to look like that, with skin the color of cooked chicken meat, blue-green eyes like pond scum, and long red hair that was almost certainly not its original shade. Unnatural though her face might be, her clothing was even worse. This wretched local woman was wearing the red tunic and brown trousers of a Hadvari soldier, a horrible disgrace to the uniform. His orders from the elders of the First Land were the only thing preventing him from slaying this woman where she stood. The woman, for her part, seemed to find Dagon's barely suppressed rage almost amusing. She'd even claimed that the reason for this tunic being red and the trousers being brown was so that the enemy could not see if a soldier had been shot or had soiled himself out of fear. Her tale had evidently been meant as a joke. Apparently that was the sort of thing these savages found funny. The only thing Dagon knew for certain about this woman was that she was an assassin. She'd come with the airship when Dagon had been given his assignment, and supposedly she was connected with the mission at hand, though exactly how would be revealed later. Those orders were sealed, not to be opened until they passed through the Gates of Dawn 5 leagues to the south, which they were not to attempt until they received a signal from the elders of the First Land themselves. Dagon sorely wished the elders would get on with whatever was keeping them from sending the signal, so that he could be done with this insolent foreign bitch for good. "You're sitting in my chair, assassin," Dagon said. He'd never asked Ava her proper name, and honestly, he didn't care to know it. It wouldn't be much use anyway. The assassin would probably just give him a false name. Dagon had heard a rumor that every child in this country was given 2 names at birth. These people took in duplicity with their mother's milk. The assassin gave another smile that never touched her eyes. "I'll check for myself," she said, and with a single fluid motion, the woman leaped up out of the chair to grasp some exposed piping on the low ceiling and slipped feet first through a hole in the roof to vanish in a flash of red hair. "Simba," Dagon spat as he took his seat. "Brotherless." It was like calling someone a savage. Worse, even. Savages, as yet untouched by civilization, could not be blamed for their ignorance. No more than an infant could be blamed for soiling its linens. They were to be pitied, not hated. But the brotherless, the Silbari, they chose to remain ignorant in spite of their own knowledge, be it for the sake of greed, lust, pride, or wickedness of the soul. There was no insult in all the sundry tongues of men more grievous than to be named brotherless. But that foreign bitch had more than earned it. "How are you managing the controls, Paku?" Dagon turned his attention to the young man sitting at the helm. I don't like it, Buzzy," Paku said hastily. Officially, he was just their translator, but since the crew for this mission was smaller than usual, he was doubling as a reserve pilot. "I think I'm getting used to the controls, but I still don't like it." He gestured all around at the airship. This thing is a tool of the enemy." "Sometimes it becomes necessary to use dishonorable methods to defeat a greater enemy," Dagon said, trying to take the tone of a tutor to his valued pupil. "This I know," Paku said, and then hastily added, But don't misunderstand, Buzzy. It still feels wrong." "It should," Dagon said. "Dishonor is sometimes necessary, but it is not something that should ever feel comfortable." Dagon took solace in that. This ship was only a temporary assignment for him. There would surely be more honorable postings in his future if he just did his job and did it well. "Yes, of course," Paku laughed weakly. "You know, before we left, I heard a rumor that the elders were trying to assemble a whole fleet of these airships to match the enemy fleet." "That will never happen," Dagon scoffed. "And thank the elders for that." "You think not?" "Well, just think about it," Dagon explained. "How would we fuel them? We only need this airship for one mission, yet the fuel alone cost over 19,000 jades." "Oh, that much?" Paku gaped at the sum. The boy had been raised on a mulberry farm, and he was still trying to wrap his head around the notion that there were numbers above 10,000. I had no idea." "And besides," Dagon continued, "all of the fuel is made over there in Sibadvar." He gestured over his shoulder toward the kingdom of the enemy, the land of the brotherless. "All they need to do is cut off our supply of fuel, and our entire fleet has been defeated without firing a shot." Paku shrugged. But what if we learned how to make the fuel ourselves? But then it would just be a matter of acquiring enough of the necessary resources. And surely the cost in jades would decrease if we did not have to purchase— "You're missing the point," Dagon said. "It does us no good if we defeat the brotherless by embracing their wicked machines. it would have become the very thing we set out to vanquish. But what other choice is there? Haku said. How else can we defeat the enemy fleet, if not by matching them with... I think we have discussed this topic enough. Dagon narrowed his eyes suspiciously at the boy. I trust I have made myself clear, Ba Lu. Dagon took special care to address the boy as the inferior that he was, and conspicuously fingered the long dark braid hanging over his left shoulder that marked his rank. Haku blinked and hastily bowed his head. Forgive me, Bazi. I forgot myself for a moment. See that it doesn't happen again, Dagon said, relieved that order had been restored. Haku was much too intelligent for his own good. Soldiers were not supposed to be clever. That sort of thing could easily lead to low morale or confusion in battle, or even mutiny. Not only that, but Haku had no doubt been exchanging conversation with that assassin woman. Who could say what sort of poisoned ideas she was pouring into Haku's ears? And I will leave that for the moment.
Very nice. Very nice
Indeed.
Very good.
That
Yeah.
was great.
Very
Thank you.
good. Very,
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, like I think that this is a very excellent introduction. Like I've definitely get this guy's culture very quickly from what you read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out how to do their accent, though. Which is causing me trouble because I have to actually introduce a character who isn't going to be diegetically translated in a while.
Huh.
That is to say, it's not, the story isn't told from his perspective, so I have to, and he's going to speak in the local equivalent of the common tongue, basically English. So I have to figure out how his accent is going to work.
Okay.
And I've been poring over all my conlang notes to somehow figure out the phonology.
Very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm. As well as
Alright.
like the accent, how you did the accents also helps.
Yeah.
Example, like it just sort of helps us immerse ourselves better.
It
Come
really
now,
does.
comrade. You must share all of this with the community. You don't want to go to the gulags now, do you?
This is probably the wrong time to mention that I am myself a communist.
Well, then it's off to the gulags for you there, dear comrade. For you are not communist enough.
Oops. Actually, I'm what would have been called in the Soviet Union a voluntarnik. That means someone who agrees in communism but thinks that the Soviet Union isn't actually doing a very good job of it.
Well, that we can agree on.
Yes.
Just remember, guys, communism has never been tried before.
Yeah,
Well, it would be more accurate to say it's never been achieved before.
I would agree with
Communism
that.
is supposed to be the end state of the socialist project.
I mean, you're
The trouble
not
is, whenever
wrong.
they try to implement the socialist project, they get hung up on the actual socialism part of it, and they never actually try to empower the people. Except for in Vietnam and Cuba, which is why those countries are actually being. I'm actually going to be looking at them pretty closely, especially the experiment with democracy that they're trying to put together in Cuba right now. That's going to be real interesting to look at.
All right.
Well, as long
Also,
as you
because
don't...
whenever anyone tries to set up a communist country, the CIA comes in and overthrows them and says, "See, this is why communism doesn't work."
That is actually pretty accurate, I have to admit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Alrighty.
even as someone who despises communism, I kind of agree.
Alrighty. Well, I believe our next person is the guy who doesn't like communism, Mr. Kaiju God. I'm sorry. Sorry, that was cheap. I apologize. But
No, I'm loud and proud. Better dead than red.
Hey, yeah, I guess the two kaiju guys gotta fight the Reds. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, kaiju,
you'll
you wanna give him a helicopter ride?
Yeah, sure.
Hoorah!
Yeah, you'll take
Would it
my
be a
property from my
Rodan
cold,
ride?
dead hands. But anyways, this is no time for politics.
Yeah, no.
All right, I apologize. So this is so you know that fan fiction I told you I was working about when I first came on?
I think
A
so.
while
Yeah.
back, yeah.
I published the first chapter. Actually, it's not terribly long because, you know, it's just I don't know, but it's titled "Go Team Ranger Go."
Okay.
Go, go, Power
Alrighty then.
Rangers.
I was trying
Yeah.
not to make
Yeah,
reference.
you're not wrong. It is kind of certain names and stuff are inspired in terms of names, not necessarily characters. But hey, if Rooster Teeth can flat out rip off certain animes and shows, I mean, just borrowing names. I mean, that's just kind of par for the course, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm doing with the with
Oh, I
the
steal names all the time.
magic of
Same.
music. I'm taking a name and then I'm changing what the character looks like. So
Power
So
Rangers go.
extra. So like extra points if you also get a certain reference to a certain brood I put into the first chapter.
okay.
Oh.
Alrighty then, so here we go. It was a blazing hot day in Vale as a tall, blue-haired young man held a large pack and several cases attached to his back. I'm not built for this heat, he mumbled. After what felt like hours, he came to the dock where an airship was boarding. Thank God. The young man sighed. Last call for beacon. The pilot called as he went over his list. Hold up! The young man called, dragging his cargo to the ship. He set his bag down and caught a breath. Name? The pilot asked. Royce Kruger, the young man said. Looking over the list, the pilot took his pen and checked off his name. Made it just in time, he said, looking over his bags and cases. You know, you could have had that delivered directly to the school, right? Picking up his bag, Royce gave a long sigh. That's more than I can afford, he remarked before heading into the ship. The cool air from the AC hit Royce's face and gave him some new life. Giving a relieved sigh, he took a seat and let out a long groan before he began looking around. Across from him, he saw an Amazonian woman, at least 7 feet tall with a pair of feline ears. Royce couldn't help but stare at her. He'd never seen a woman of such size. The woman looked up, causing him to quickly look away. His eyes were now on a girl with shoulder-length red hair and a military uniform. Katana was sitting next to her and a rather large handgun holstered to her hip. The woman across from him seemed to scrunch down like she was trying to make herself seem shorter than she really was. Royce looked back at her and couldn't help but chuckle a bit. The woman's ears folded against her head and her tan skin had a tint of like red on her cheeks. Sorry, Royce sighed a bit. I didn't mean to stare. The woman looked at him and smiled. It's all right. Not many women of my height around here, she said awkwardly, rather embarrassed. Royce leaned forward a bit. You'll get the occasional 6-foot girls, but never one's taller than me. I'm guessing not from around here? The woman shook her head. It's a long story. Royce could hear a distinct accent in her voice, which I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. It enhanced her already exotic feel. Now that he was paying more attention, he could see just how beautiful she was. Well, anyways, I'm Royce, he introduced himself, holding out his hand. Nayela, she said with a smile as she took his hand. Her grip was very firm, like a strong man's shake. But she was clearly a woman in every way. Nice to meet you, Royce. Her smile grew, showing some impressive canines. But it was the warmth she gave off that hit Royce the most. Yeah, same, he said as he leaned back. So, you're going to Beacon too? He asked. Nayela gave a nod. I'm at least going to give it a try. Royce cracked his neck. He didn't really know how to continue the conversation. Come on, think of something, he thought. But while he thought, the ship finally landed. Well, we're here, Royce said as he stood. Nyala stood up too. Her size really began to sink in, so much so that Royce dropped one of his cases. Before he could pick it up, Nyala had picked it up instead, with no problem. Strong one, that's 50 pounds, he said. Yeah, Nyala responded awkwardly. That's pretty cool, Royce remarked as they got in line to get off the ship. Nyala blushed a bit as she got behind him. As the line moved forward, when they stepped out, the redhead Royce had noticed earlier bumped into Nyala. Oh, I'm sorry, she said, but the redhead gave her a rather nasty glare, causing Nyala to shrink back a bit. Royce, however, got in the redhead's face. Hey, apologize, he snarled. The redhead put her hands behind her back. I don't see why I should. Perhaps she should use her height to look out for those Perhaps she should use her height to look out for those more vertically challenged, the other woman said. Nyala was taken aback by Royce's actions and felt even more insecure at the redhead's words. Or you could use these things called eyes. I mean, unless you're blind, stupid, or some configuration of the two, then you should be able to see, you clown. The redhead's eye twitched a bit. I'll remember this, she said before walking off. Royce gave a bit of a growl before looking back at Nyala. You okay? He asked. She was a bit red in the face but nodded. Yeah, I'm good. Royce gave a small smile. Ah, shit! Orientation, he cursed. Come on. Nyala gave a chuckle and followed after him as they ran. When they got to the auditorium, a tall man in a dark suit wearing a gas mask was about to speak. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beacon. I am the headmaster, Professor Don Maul, he said with a thick British accent. These next 4 years will be interesting, to say the least. You will all undergo the best training I have to offer. However, it will be far from easy. The man adjusted his mask. I expect many of you won't make it past your first year. There is no shame in dropping out if it means you'll live longer than you would here. What students still making noise went immediately silent upon hearing that. For those that do stay, but more importantly survive, I look forward to see what you have to offer. You are dismissed. With that, he adjusted his red tie and stepped off stage. Royce was a bit pale in the face. He wasn't exactly how to feel about the speech. Nyala, too, was a bit taken aback by it, but looked at Royce and placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sure you'll do fine, she said with a warm smile. Royce blushed and looked away. Thanks. Later that night, everyone was staying in the commons area until they were separated into teams. Royce and Nyala were both off near the back and separated a few feet. Taking one of his heavy cases, Royce opened it, revealing 2 pistols. They had a very redneck look, grimy and obviously made of discarded scrap. Nyala looked at them and scooted over to him. Those your weapons? She asked. Royce nodded. Yeah, made them out of some old plasma cutters and scrap, he explained. Nyala looked at them with a curious cat look. They fire bolts of plasma, basically the stuff stars and lightning are made out of. Nyala's eyes gleamed with the newfound knowledge and smiled. That's really cool, she exclaimed. Royce shrugged a bit. Yeah, but they overheat too easily, which is why, with a flick of his wrist and the push of a button, the pistol turned into a short sword. Nyala clapped, still intrigued by the weapon. Royce looked at her a bit confused at her excitement. So, what's your weapon? He asked. Reaching over, Nyala grabbed a giant case and pulled it in front of her. She opened it, showing a set of massive claw gauntlets. Each of the fingers were 4 feet long with serrations on the inside of the blades. The thumbs were only about 2 feet long but had the same general design. Damn, impressive, Royce remarked, feeling a bit emasculated. He noticed that the claws had a silver-like sheen to them, more so than steel, at least from what he's seen. May I? He asked. Naila nodded with a smile and watched Royce try and pick up one of the gauntlets. It didn't budge. The thing must have weighed at least 300 pounds. Holy shit, that's heavy. How in the... Before he could finish, Naila had slipped one on and was moving her fingers with little effort. It's a family secret, she teased before putting her weapon away. The young man was in awe of the Amazon's strength. Naila, seeing the look on her face, hunched down in embarrassment. Royce snapped out of his daze and laid down. We should get some sleep. Initiation is tomorrow, he said. Right, Naila replied, laying down as well before both drifting off to sleep. End.
So the orangey redheaded cat girl, and the guy with the sword that turns into a gun, and his name is Kruger. I think I got the reference.
No.
Belch, my lord.
No. The redhead is a different character.
I don't know who any of these people are.
It sounds like a reference to Cat and Doggy Kruger from SPD.
The reference to Cat is not there, but the reference to Kruger is.
Okay, so I must have just come up with a cat thing myself.
Yeah. But did anyone else get the other reference?
I don't think so.
The Don Mall. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen.
I was about to say, I'm like, I saw one had said it in the comments. Where was that Dunn who said that? Wait, I'm just checking. I think someone did say it. No, but Dunn said it. Dunn recognized it. Hello
yes.
there, ladies.
Mahler is the headmaster.
Oh, nice.
Also, you said it was a British accent. You should have, if to make it even more on the nose, you should have said Welsh.
Welsh?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mahler's accent is extremely distinctive.
Yeah.
He doesn't sound. The thing is, he doesn't sound Welsh.
What would a Welshman sound like? Would it be like?
I don't know.
I think they
My
usually
uncle
sound
is
like
Welsh,
these.
He sounds very much like he was raised in London because he was.
Has a very proper accent.
Now all we need to do is that in future stories, you need to have some of that good Mahler wit just for those insults.
Oh yeah.
Insulting the students, you twat.
How do you this fucking stupid?
And here we go. Oh, you need a doggo reference too, like someone who's a dog. Make sure you pet your doggo.
And milk your rhino.
Would you like to come in? Oh, the white stuff there? Exquisite rhino milk. We farm them ourselves.
So, thoughts, opinions, criticism?
I like it. It's nice.
I like it too.
The references really make it makes me laugh in like the best way possible. I always love it when people do that.
I don't want to make them too overt.
It's what's it called? It's right on the line between subtle and overt, and it does it really well. I like it.
Oh, thank you. I realize I there's a typo near the end. I'm gonna have to fix it because my fingers are stupid.
Oh no, don't worry. I had a ton of typos in the copy for my own story that I was reading. So like I was literally scribbling like change that as I was reading. So you're good. Don't worry. We all have those moments.
And I had a typo too. I had a great feathery dragon where it was supposed to be greater. And I fixed that.
Also, I want to say that I cannot for the life of me spell tomorrow correctly without autocorrect.
I can't.
You can't spell tomorrow.
No, I can't spell tomorrow, but I can spell something like Dromaeosaur, Carcharodontosaurus, Tyrannosauroidea.
Oh, trust me, I'm
It's-
the same way with Premiere.
It's
Oh god, I can't tell you how many times I have confused finish with one end and finish with two ends. And because
Oh.
both words, my spell check can't help me there, and I get so.
yeah, they're both
It's-
words. They sound the same, but they mean different things. I hate those words.
Like bear.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never had problems with bear.
Well, no, I've done it. It's bear and there. Those are the two words where, when I'm not really paying attention to when I'm writing, I mess that up so much.
Well,
No, you know what it was? I changed. I switched computers a while back, and my new computer has a completely different keyboard action than what I'm used to. So all my instincts are completely wrong. And
There you go.
because my older keyboard had a much heavier action, so I had to pound away on every single key. But now, if I pound away on this thing, I'm going to break it. Flimsy little piece of shit.
I've like both because sometimes I'm writing on my iPad and sometimes I'm writing on my computer. Thankfully, both of them feel about the same, so I've never had that issue. Thankfully.
I don't really like touch keyboards. I prefer
Classic keyboards.
yeah, with the clackety clack clack clack. It just doesn't feel right to be typing on something that doesn't make that sound.
One of my
Okay,
friends,
boomer.
Okay,
I'm not a boomer.
boomer.
I'm not.
Punch the
Be
key!
a boomer.
No, now we need to have a boomer cat girl art now. There you go.
I would totally be fine with that. That sounds awesome.
It's just her profile picture, but like with a monster in her hand, a white monster. Some good old
Aw.
boomer juice. Yeah, you kids and your video games and your Fortnites. Back in my day, we had a NES.
Listen here. If when we wanted to ignore our parents on a fucking family field trip, we used our Game Boys. None of this fancy smartphone shit.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It was black and white with no internal lighting, man. You had to either get one of those little plug-in lights, or you better hope to fucking God the
remember
sun.
Oh
that.
my goodness.
Yes, I remember that.
You gotta hope the sun's not out too hard or you get glare.
We had to take the whole level over when we got killed. It sucked. It was repetitive, and we liked it.
Anyone else remember Gen 1 when Gen 1 was the only Pokemon game we had?
As far as I'm concerned, there's only 150 Pokemans, and that's all there needs to be.
Look, okay, if I want to exploit the missing no glitch to have a level 100 team before the 4th gym, I sure as hell, it is my right to do so.
That is my right.
Yeah.
Oh God, we're old.
Instead of Writer
Certainly feels
Showcase,
that way.
Boomers Reminisce. That's what the game's gonna be called now. Boomers Reminisce. I'm gonna have to send down a picture of just a boomer dad.
So the thing is, like, I didn't even have a GameCube growing up, so I had to suffer through my parents all the time.
You mean a Game Boy or a GameCube? Those are
Either.
different things.
I
Game
didn't have any.
Boy.
I mean, I
I-
never had a GameCube growing up either, but I had a Game Boy.
I didn't even have that.
They wouldn't
There
give
was no gaming apparatus in my house, and
Oh, you
until my
poor
Wii.
Yeah,
baby!
you poor man.
The
Yeah.
PC was our gaming apparatus.
Yeah.
And am I going to have to gently stroke your hair and talk to you?
Well, at least later on, I got a PC where I could play Battle for Middle Earth or Age of Empires because my parents wanted to get me into history. So,
Hey, there you go.
yeah. Oh, at least
Yes.
I could to
Battle
you.
for Middle Earth, the history of the One Ring.
Well, as well as
Battle
Age
for
of
Middle Earth
Empires.
is my jam.
Age,
Yeah,
Age
Age
of
of Empires
Empires.
was fun.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Alrighty.
See, I'm just now becoming part of the PC master race, so
Oh,
No, you know what's a real good PC game? Warzone 2100.
okay.
It's
So-
open source, free to download. and it's got this really huge, intricate tech tree. Very active modding community. It's amazing.
Okay.
I still play my Scurum. Good old beautiful
Alrighty.
Scurum.
Alrighty, so is everybody ready to read the Battle of the First Dragon Strife?
I'm not sure how it's going to work. The private chat. Who am I again, and how am I supposed to know when to start reading?
Okay, so I think what I'll do is I try to kind of to tell when the perspective is, but I can also just say you're up. Would that work, or would that kind of disrupt the flow?
If we're fine with disrupting the flow, that would be fine because that would let us know a lot easier.
Yeah,
may as well.
So the reader is okay, and I put the names in the chat, and I'll just kind of say, so first up is Neph.
Hey.
Do you want me to read the chapter heading too?
No, you don't necessarily
Okay.
have to. The whole thing is basically just the first Dragon Strife is the is the thing.
So we're on page 13, right?
Yep. Just
Sorry about that. Okay. You need to leave. Your father is in danger. Aloria started up in bed, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was nothing there. Shaking her head, Aloria quickly processed what she'd heard. Then she ran to the couch, then started tossing the cushions towards the bed. When she'd gotten them situated in a semblance of a person-shaped bulge, she pulled the covers over her bed. Fear and exhilaration were raging inside her. Hopefully the pillows she'd put on the bed would prevent anyone from noticing she was gone too early. Quickly, she pulled on her clothes and rushed out the door, trying to push down her fear as she made her way up to the eyrie. Is that how it's said?
Yep, Eerie.
Whichever. Okay. As soon as she got close, she sent a nudge to Malus, though she made sure to tell the silver she-dragon not to make any noise. Thankfully, Hysteria was asleep, so her mother wouldn't try coming after her for a while. As Aloria crept into the tower, Malus slowly rose to her claws, swishing her tail eagerly. "We're going to fight, Aloria?" the beautiful silver dragon asked, lowering her head so that Aloria could put her saddle onto her. Yeah, Aloria nodded and pulled herself into the dragon's saddle. "Let's go." Silently, Malus padded over to the edge of the tower and threw herself out into the air, wings propelling her forward.
Carl?
Woo, Carl, your turn.
Oh, sorry, forgot to unmute. That's embarrassing. Merrick and Rhaenar took Baelon and Cairhien north. Salara, directing their army on the ground, just as the invading force led by Emissalia and her dragon, Meraxia, came down the river toward them. For some reason, mist as thick as soup coated the entire area, though most of it seemed to be concentrated on the river. Curious. Merrick glanced toward the area, trying to see anything, but the fog was too thick. Grimacing, he turned his attention back toward the enemy. They were coming at them in force. Mostly light cavalry, though the corps was made up of brunish heavy cavalry. And on the wings were ranks of horse archers. Something about this whole situation felt off. The fog was too thick for this rather misty time of year. The Easterling force was moving south through the fog, much of the enemy army concealed by the enshrouding mist. Unfortunately, Merrick couldn't go straight for the kill, not with Meraxia flying above the enemy army.
Where the hell is Vhagar?
Merrick wondered, glancing around in an attempt to see if the shadow of the ominous black dragon was against the stars.
If I see her, I will kill her.
Balon growled, eyes eagerly searching the sky, as if the fervor of his gaze would summon the fearsome black dragon. Closing his fist on Judgment's long hilt, Merrick was about to move toward the army when Meraxia took the initiative. The red and black dragons swooped down towards Kairia and Rhaenar, fire blasting from her jaws. Sensing the attack, the white she-dragon swept to the side, dodging the flames, and sending her own blast of pale flame toward the larger beast. Graceful as ever, Meraxia swerved away, swooping wide and then dropping toward her opponent. Thinking quickly, Merrick took Balon toward the enemy, only to curse as the enemy dragon swerved around Kairia and him, though not before blasting the white dragon in the side, causing her to careen in the air. Balon bellowed in fury at the injury to his mate, and shot toward Meraxia, silver ice fire rushing from his jaws in a torrent. As if she were untethered by wind or on air currents, the red and black she-dragon dodged the attack, then shot toward Balon.
Amissaria knows how to dance the skies on her dragon,
Merrick yelled, as the other dragons swooped around them, blasting fire from her jaws, ducking and weaving gracefully. Clearly infuriated, Rhaenar took Kairia toward the enemy she-dragon, trying to close with Meraxia, but the other dragon danced around her like a falcon baiting a hawk.
I believe Neph is up next. Well, actually, I'll read this part, and we'll just keep Neph as the voice of Ellaria.
Okay, that's fine.
Selara watched the dragons battle high above them, Kairia and Aelon attempting to grapple with Meraxia in the sky, the multicolored flames creating a sun in the mist-covered evening sky. Grimacing, she glared toward the enemy position, carefully mapping out the plan of attack they'd likely perpetrate. The enemy would likely send its light elven cavalry forward, throwing spears and trying to harry the flanks, while the horse archers attacked using hit and run tactics so that the center would be sufficiently weakened enough for the heavy cavalry to smash through the lines. "Pikemen forward!" she yelled. "Porcupine formation!" The men rushed forward, several ranks lowering their spears and raising their shield as they formed an elongated horseshoe formation with the outside curve toward the enemy, the two lines of pikes and heavy cavalry on either side. Why would the enemy be attempting to attack in the middle of a mist-covered evening close to pitch black? Selara wondered as the enemy broke into a charge, the light cavalry and horse archers attacking first, sending volley after volley toward them in quick succession. "Shields!" Selara yelled, just as the enemy arrows fell. Metal clacked against metal as shaft clashed with large steel orc shields. Thinking quickly, Selara picked up her lance and waved her weapon. "Cavalry, forward!" With a collective yell, her heavy orc and human cavalry rushed forward. Horses making up the center while the wolf riders were on the flanks. The enemy cavalry tried to pull backward, but the Numenorian cavalry slammed into them at speed. Selara's lance slammed into Easterling after Easterling, trying to go for the exposed parts of the horses as opposed to the more heavily armored riders. Though often the force of her charging horsemen made it so that she had to go for the easier target. The enemy cavalry retreated to the sides, firing arrows into the heavy cavalry, just as the light cavalry disengaged and rushed toward the flanks of the infantry. A squadron of wolf riders disengaged from the rest of the army, riders and beasts alike howling for blood. Just as she were about to join the attack, Selara's lance slipped from her blood-stained hands as she tried to pull it free. Snarling, she wiped her hand on her pants and drew her sword, then engaged an Easterling rider, single eye flickering side to side as she tried to keep anybody from slipping and attack her from the side. silver blade swinging. Salara exchanged blows over and over with the enemy rider until finally she managed to duck around to strike and stab him through the side before slashing his stallion across the neck. The poor creature screamed and toppled to the ground, dashing away into the mess, crashing into friend and foe alike as its rider lolled in the saddle. Before the battle could devolve into complete chaos, Salara yelled for her cavalry to disengage. The infantry advanced, spears lowered. The Numenorian cavalry pulled away, the infantry rushing toward the singularly disorganized enemy cavalry. Just as two sides engaged, the sounds of mechanics creaking began and coming from on the broad river, along with the lights illuminated the outlines of large ships in the fog. "Oh, sod it!" Salara yelled as lights became flaming boulders falling among her infantry. Casting a dark, fiery light over the battlefield. "Rally to me!" Salara yelled, raising her sword as the enemy's heavy cavalry rushed through from the mist. More and more of them. They planned for this. The loud bang, the sounds of barges and carrier ships dropping their ramps came from the bank and inked down from below them. Sounds of men and horses charging off of the boats and onto the shore. We set ourselves up. Salara realized as a mass of Alethian cavalry each charged into the rear of her crescent formation. They played us. Grimacing, Salara waved her sword toward her cavalry, calling for them to follow her and at least buy time for the infantry to form up. In a wild charge, the enemy broke out around the infantry as fast as they could, not before some of the enemy managed to crash into the rear. The battle was a mess of yelling elves, orcs, elves, and humans. Cavalry smashing into each other as the infantry in the front lines had to contend with fresh, heavy cavalry. Salara glanced up, hoping to get some help from the dragons above, but Meraxia was still engaging both Kyura and Balon. "It's up to me," Salara grimaced, urging her horse forward into the tangle of metal and flesh. "Hold fast, men!" she yelled as she plunged into the enemy force, using the momentum of her cavalry to at least create enough of a gap for the infantry in the rear to form up and push forward. With a yell, both sides began pushing against each other, even as more flaming boulders were hurled into the packed mass of infantry. Assaulted on both sides, the Numenorian cavalry attempted to hold off the enemy, while the infantry in the rear tried to form up and push back despite the rocks raining down on them. Smoke burning her eye, Salara wiped sweat from her brow and started slashing wildly, trying to think a way out of this death trap. "The infantry is in place, Commander," one of her men rode up to her. "The ships," Salara thought as she glanced toward the carriers as they kept hurling stones at her infantry as enemy horse archers began firing at her into the flanks. Grimacing, she hefted her sword and took a firmer grip on the hilt. "Get the cavalry together," she yelled. "We need to funnel the enemy into the infantry." "Yes, Commander." The messenger rode up to give her orders. The cavalry began moving backward, trying to reinforce the flanks, just as the enemy disengaged to allow a strong force of Easterling spearmen to move into the cavalry. "We need to get to the ships," she grimaced. "If we don't take them, we'll..." Salara's eyes widened in horror as a powerful, hot wind rose, blowing large sections of mist around them, revealing a large black dragon coated in thick, dark armor taking off from a large dragon carrier ship. Vagar had come, and on her back was Prince Aborn. With a roar, the mighty black dragon flung herself into the air, propelling herself toward the three dragons battling in the sky. "It's now or never," Salara thought, waving desperately toward her cavalry. "Will you follow me?" She pointed toward the ships. The men and orcs raised their weapons, letting out guttural war cries. Without another word, Salara spurred her horse forward along the ledge just above the riverbank, even as a fresh group of elves and orcs were disgorged onto the beach below them, silvery weapons and armor reflecting the light of the dragons high above them. Screaming in fury, Salara led her men in a mad charge toward the ship, spurring her horse to leap over the first few ranks of infantry from the ledge, even as her own men crashed into them, scattering them aside. "Fight your way to the ships!" Salara yelled, slashing wildly with her sword as she pushed through the disorganized enemy ranks, angst toward the tightly packed ramps. As she advanced, a volley of arrows shot from her infantry toward the enemy coming onto the bank, causing many of them to fall as her troops rushed onto the ship's ramps. Carl, your turn.
It's her!
Balin roared as he turned in the air toward Vhagar. Merrick hung onto the dragon's saddle, carefully reining his dragon's rage in so that he didn't put himself at Vhagar's mercy. Vaguely he noted that Meraxia, finally halting her dance to close with Kyera and move on to the attack. Bellowing out her own challenge, the black dragon rose up and unleashed a torrent of midnight flame at Balon, massive dark wings propelling her skyward. Thinking quickly, Merak nudged Balon to dodge to the side, the large silver dragon spinning in the air out of the way of the attack and plummeting downward.
You killed my mate!
Balon roared, right before a torrent of ice fire gushed from his mouth. Vhagar dodged to the side and swept upward, then shot toward the enemy.
It wasn't me that killed Aphrodite!
The dragon bellowed, her raspy voice sending chills down Merrick's spine.
But it will be me who kills you, Balon!
Roaring in fury, Balon tucked his wings and charged his enemy, her own roars drowning out the sounds of battle below. Vhagar rushed to meet Balon, her fangs bared and her claws exposed. With a crash like an avalanche, the two dragons smashed into each other, snapping and clawing at each other, trying to grapple for purchase. After a moment of terrible, rapid conflict, Merak and Balon managed to disentangle themselves from Vhagar. Before the other dragon could react, Balon opened his jaws and unleashed a stream of silvery ice fire at his enemy. Vhagar's jaws opened and her own midnight flame collided with Balon's, steam rising from the two streams of fire. Before Merak could think of something different to break the stalemate, the figure in dark armor atop Vhagar's back drew a long black sword. Instantly the blade ignited, a burst of flame shooting towards his enemy with a roar. The attack struck Balon's chest, causing him to stumble in the air, his concentration slackening enough for Vhagar's jet of flame to overpower him. Roaring, Balon dropped down, then sent another burst of flame at her. Before Balon's attack could reach her, Vhagar dropped down, just out of the way of the ice fire, before rising upward. Thinking quickly, Merak turned his dragon to the side, past the Numen Vhagar toward the enemy force, icy flame blasting the Easterling cavalry and allowing the Numenarian infantry to reform and start pushing toward both halves of the enemy. With a loud bellow, the enemy dragon shot down and unleashed her own torrent of flame at Merak's army. Before the flame could emerge, Balon broadsided Vhagar like a thunderbolt, trying to get his teeth around his enemy's neck as his claws sought for purchase in the other dragon's armor. Before he could latch onto Vhagar, the black dragon lashed out with her armor's spiked tail, ripping a chunk of Balon's side away with a sickening thud before her jaws latched onto the other dragon's wing and tore it off with a loud crunch. Roaring in pain, Balon careened in the air, Merak's stomach churning as his dragon lost control. With a bellow, Vhagar shot downward towards him, claws outstretched. Balon blasted her with a torrent of icy flame, but the black terror's burst of midnight fire struck the silver dragons and reduced it to steam before colliding with his wounded side. Screaming in pain, Balon spun in the air, unable to halt his descent toward the ships below him. As he turned, Merak realized that his dragon was exposing his back to Vhagar. For a moment, Merak thought he could see the glint of the silver dragon approaching. "No," he whispered as he saw the figure atop the dragon lowering his black sword at the dragons. "Run, Eloria."
From his vantage atop Vagar's back, Aborn watched as Balon art-wheeled in the air, control lost in his wild descent to the ground. It felt cheap somehow to land this final blow while his enemy wasn't in full form, but he'd learned to seize his victories with both hands a long time ago. Lowering Darkfire, the ancient sword of his forefather Aemond, Aborn unleashed a torrent of fire at Merrick. Neph?
Aloria sped towards the battlefield, the sounds of 4 enormous dragons announcing the presence of combat, as much as the flames that spiraled around them high in the sky. "Come on, Malus," she urged, willing her young she-dragon to go faster. With a shriek of challenge, the silver dragon shot forward. The other 4 shot towards the other 4 dragons as they battled. As she approached, she saw her father's dragon close with Vagar herself. For a moment, Allura wanted to cheer, but before Balon could close his jaws around Vagar's armored neck, the huge black she-dragon swung her mace-like tail into the other dragon's side. Alluria's cheer turned into a scream of horror as Vagar's fangs ripped off Balon's wing, causing him to careen downward in an uncontrolled spiral. "Daddy!" Alloria screamed as Vagar's flames overwhelmed her father's, causing him to spin even worse than the final blow fell. By this point, she'd gotten close enough to see her father sitting in his dragon's saddle easily, roaring a torrent of fire shot from Vagar's back, striking her father right in the chest, turning him and the saddle into an inferno. Screaming, Alloria urged her dragon at Vagar, just as Kyra and Meraxia began climbing upward. Vagar was 3 times the size of Malus, the hardened survivor of 100 battles, and had slain several dragons in single combat. At this moment, Alloria didn't care. Bellowing, Vagar unleashed a blast of fire at Malus, but the much smaller silver dragon dodged around the attack, then unleashed her own fire. As if she were shrugging off a fly, Vagar let the blast hit her armor, then descended towards her like a hawk on a shrike. Thinking quickly, Alloria took Malus up and around Vagar, forcing her to try and chase her. As Vagar started flying after Alloria and Malus, the ballistas on the ships began hurling bolt after bolt at the black dragon. Many of them simply pinged harmlessly off her armor, but a few managed to strike the membrane in her wings, causing the monstrous beast to roar in pain as her flesh was punctured by long metal shafts. High above them, thunder rumbled as a storm began to form, the dark clouds spraying lightning. Keeping her eyes forward, Alloria urged Malus up and up into the storm clouds, trying to draw her enemy into a place where she could hit and run.
Salara led her men onto the deck of one of the ships, slaughtering as many as she could, followed by her faithful soldiers. The battle rage was coursing through her like fine wine as she hacked and slashed her way through the treacherous Alethians, her sword already caked in blood. Breath coming in labored spurts, she hacked off the hand of a sailor before he could attack her. Then she kicked him over the railing into the large river. The loud bellowing of the dragons high above of them turned her attention skyward for a moment. As soon as she saw Balon begin to plummet toward the river, one of his wings flying away from his body, Salara froze, her men rushing around her to clear out the decks. Once there was only men bearing the blue dragon and sword. They all looked up, hope dying in their eyes as the enormous black dragon blasted their Dragonlord's beast with a torrent of fire. Just as Balon slammed into the river, a smaller silver dragon shot toward Vagar, shrieking with fury. No! Salara rushed to one of the ballistas, aiming to her soldiers. Shoot that bitch out of the sky! No, 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 not Eloria too! The men rushed to the other siege equipment, waving flags to the other ships under their control. The ballistas fired over and over again, though Vagar seemed to shrug off most of them, and like they were nothing. Salara quickly reloaded her ballista and kept on firing. That monster would not take her baby sister away. Commander Salara! She turned her hand briefly to see a few of her men carrying a burned corpse with a large sword clutching in his hands. We found your father. The leader called to her as he lowered the body to the deck, all of them clearly distressed at the loss of their commander. Take over from me. She motioned toward one of the men on duty and rushed to her father as he took her place, ace manning the ballista. Clenching and unclenching her fists, Salara dropped to her knees beside the charred corpse of her father and put her hand on his chest, then onto Judgment's hilt. Quietly, she began praying over him, hopefully to give him some peace as he passed on to the next life. Once she was done, she peeled her father's hands away from the sword, then lifted the weapon. Blue flame rippled along the blade as she pointed it toward Vagar and Meraxia. Killed both of them. She was surprised at how calm her voice was, as if seeing her father's corpse had leached all emotion out of her. As if to counterpoint, rain began plummeting down from the sky. Neph.
It's Eloria again?
Yep.
Okay. Despite the sounds of the storm, Vagar's angry roars were so loud that they made Eloria's ears hurt, even as the black beast's midnight flames pursued her, with the dragon herself close behind. Swift as the wind, Malus ducked and weaved out of banks of clouds, striking at the larger creature with their own bursts of fire. Frustrated, Eloria turned to get in close, only to immediately regret it when Vagar swung in from the side and nearly snatched Malus out of the sky with a snap of her enormous jaws. Angrily, Vagar bellowed and unleashed a torrent of midnight flames at Eloria and her dragon. Snarling, Malus swung around and up, a river of fire pursuing her with relentless aggression, turning several droplets into steam. Malus' wings flapped rapidly as Eloria guided her through the clouds, dodging around Vagar and trying to get towards the ground. Roaring, Vagar swerved and snapped at Malus, nearly catching her wing in her fangs, but Eloria managed to nudge her dragon away from the ancient she-dragon's jaws. Maybe I can use this to my advantage, Eloria thought, as she and Malus ducked and wove through the clouds. Vagar was large and powerful, but her aim was so broad that she couldn't aim it properly. Couldn't direct it properly. Also, she made a very big target. Firming her grip on the saddle horn, Eloria sent Malus straight downward, right at the battlefield below them, Vagar in hot pursuit.
Drake, your turn.
Ragnar watched his brother and the dragon crash into 3 of the ships, the masts breaking under Balon's bulk. Kyera screamed as her mate fell into the river, the ships cracking while at the same time buoying him up. Shrieking out a challenge, Meraxia shot down from the sky and slamming into Kyera. The 2 dragons snapped and clawed at one another, plummeting towards the ground in an uncontrolled spiral. With a yell, Ragnar urged his dragon to blast her opponent with her own fire, trying to get an advantage. Before she could, Meraxia grasped onto Kyera's stomach with her claws and ripped open a wide gash, only to have the white dragon sunk her teeth into the red dragon's neck and tear a chunk out of her neck. Kyera tried to retreat her head Abraxia's fang maw latched onto her neck. Raynar let out a yell as the red dragon's wing claw grasped onto the top and bottom of Kyra's jaw and pulled it open, only to send a torrent of fire down her throat. For a few agonizing moments, the white she-dragon twisted and contorted in pain until finally the fire did its work. With a horrible, ripping noise, Kyra's head tore free of her neck as her lifeless body began falling down to the ground. Raynar only had a few moments to yell from fear, a trail of wetness going down his knee before he collided with the ground, and the world went black.
Melissa watched Kyra and Raynar plummet toward the ground with a slight bit of sadness. Raynar had been quite kind when he'd visit her on one of the progresses, same with his older brother. Meraxia snarled and shook her head, clearly in pain from the wound on her neck. Shame that we had to kill them, the red and onyx she-dragon remarked. It was an awful necessity. Melissa clenched her fist, then glanced up as Aborn and Vagar pursued a new, much smaller dragon as it attempted to keep just ahead of the gargantuan older monster. Abruptly, she realized that her men below her were being bombarded by the ships below him. Grimacing in concentration, Melissa turned Meraxia toward the ships that had turned against her, wings pumping to repel her against the stormy wind. A loud roar from above them caused Emelisa to glance upward at the storm clouds, just in time to see a flash of silver scales pursued by a much larger black shadow. The smaller silver dragon was fast, very fast, smaller size allowing her a speed that Vagar couldn't quite match due to her enormous size. Meraxia was faster than his compatriot, but that was because she was not as powerfully built as Vagar. Eagerly, Melissa urged her dragon toward the smaller creature in an attempt to head her off, but the enemy dragon swerved out of the way just in time, nearly causing a collision between her and Vagar. Before they could smash into each other, Aborn and Vagar had Vagar open up her wings and shoot out of the way, her prey going right for the men wearing the red demon even on their breastplates. We need to neutralize her before she kills more of our troops, Melissa called to Aborn, who was clearly urging his dragon to take up the pursuit again. We can't incinerate her with our troops in the way, Aborn yelled back, clearly annoyed at this turn of events as he flew past her. Get around her and shepherd her toward me. Then once she's within Vagar's reach, it will be over. Melissa nodded at the soundness of the plan, then urged Meraxia after the silver dragon. Selara watched in amazement as her little sister dodged and weaved around Vagar with an amazing display of skill, though for all her speed, Meles could do little more than irritate the Black Terror. However, it seemed as though the younger girl was trying to ease their troops away, escape by how she was burning the Alethian troops, steadily inching toward the now Numenorian-controlled ships. A sudden realization of what they could do sparked in Selara's mind as Zelaria flew Meles into a group of Easterling cavalry, using her claws rather than her fire to scatter them, leaving several broken bodies in her wake. Meraxia was getting close. The red and black she-dragon was very close to the ground. Give me one of those chain bolts, she yelled, and bring the ship close to the land. We only have one shot to down Meraxia. Shrieking, Meles swung high above the battlefield, Vagar and Meraxia close behind her, but she managed to swing between the two, dodging their claws like a sparrow with two eagles. Come on, Selara whispered as Meles dropped toward the battlefield for another pass. I need you to get them closer, just a bit more. Neph, actually, would you be willing to read Amelisa's next section, please?
Sure, no problem. Bellowing, Meraxia tucked her wings and dropped, using gravity to pull her down towards the smaller dragon. Amelisa could taste the victory, her eyes alight with eagerness for the battle to be over and done with. She'd never liked fighting, especially against her own distant kin, but this was their birthright as Aemond's blood. The silver dragon kept on plummeting towards the ground in a rapid, though controlled descent, dodging around any of Meraxia's carefully calculated fireballs. Just before she hit the ground, the smaller sea dragon spread her wings and shot along the ground, dust trailing in her path as she swerved to the side. Reacting quickly, Meraxia's own wings snapped open, causing her to growl with exertion as she glided towards the other dragon, jaws wide as she began to close in on her prey. Before she could finish the thought, Amelisa screamed as a spinning chain ballista bolt fired from one of the ships right at Meraxia. She tried to make her dragon make a hairpin swerve, but it was too late for such maneuvers. The bolt slammed into Meraxia's shoulder, causing her to scream in pain, only to have the cry cut off as the chain wrapped around her dragon, trapping one of her wings against her side and around her neck. Shrieking in pain, Meraxia tried to get control of her fall, but before she could, she slammed into one of the ships, smashing it into kindling. Desperately, Amelisa's eyes darted around for some kind of escape, only to have a sense of dread grow in her belly as Meraxia began slipping into the water. Fire spurting from her jaws as she thrashed around in the water, smashing another of the ships with her tail and setting several alight. Hands numb, Amelisa tried to get the straps on her dragon saddle loosened, but her fingers didn't seem to want to do what they should as she slipped under the water along with her dragon. "Aborn, help me!" she screamed, reaching out a hand and taking a breath as her head dropped beneath the water.
Just before the dragon collided with the ship, Salara leaped from the deck toward the otter, along with several of her troops. Just before she hit the water, Otter, still clutching her father's sword, a spray of debris from the ship struck her in the back of the head, causing the world to go black. As soon as Meraxia slammed into the ship and began dropping into the waves, Aborn's attention was completely turned from the enemy dragon toward the wreckage. However, Vagar seemed frozen as she stared at the waves, red eyes slightly glazed. "Vagar!" Aborn yelled, mentally urging his dragon toward the river. "We need to help her." As Vagar looked down at the river, memories and emotions collided and conflicting in her head. Meraxia had participated in killing her first rider, Aemond. Aemond had sacrificed himself to kill Meraxia's rider, Elensar. But despite that fact, the strongest memory in her head was a feeling of fear as she watched a city on a lake burn, and a small silver-haired boy she'd come to love like her own hatchmate slipping below the water. Roaring, Vagar shot down toward the river, blasting the water with a black torrent of black flame. Instantly, a large section of the river was turned to steam from the heat of the torrent, causing several of the ships to sink to the riverbed. Fighting back the memories, Vagar grabbed Meraxia in her claws and pulled her rather ungainly burden to the safety of the shore before letting her drop to the ground, belling her rage and deep-seated pain at the sky. Turning toward the ships, Vagar opened her jaws and unleashed a torrent of flame at one of the ships that had been taken over by the Numenarians, turning it to ash in seconds. Snarling, she turned her attention to the next one, then the next one, tail lashing as she watched the Numenarians flee into the storm. Shrieking, the annoying little dragon shot toward her, clearly sensing an advantage, fire spurting from her jaws. Raising herself on her wing claws, Vagar bellowed at the other dragon, then turned and swung her tail like a mace. Before the dragon could dodge out of the way, the spiked blades at the end of the tail struck the younger dragon across the chest, carving a large gash in her scales. Wings flapping wildly, the silver dragon fled, blood trailing from its chest. Vagar was about to unleash another blast of flame loose at her enemy, but she vanished into the storm before the fire could reach her. Growling, Vagar turned back to Meraxia, then broke the chains with a few savage snaps. The younger dragon rose to her feet, her waterlogged rider vomiting up what looked to be half the river onto her once very nice riding dress. Blinking her large red eyes, Meraxia stared at Vagar, clearly trying to think through a haze of pain. You saved me, she remarked. Yes, I did. Vagar advanced on the other dragon, baring her teeth threateningly. Always remember that, Meraxia, she snarled. You owe me your life, and after your rider caused the death of mine. Clearly cowed, Meraxia crouched low in a gesture of respect. I will always remember this, she said, voice devoid of her usual bite. Vagar preened slightly at her victory, so much so that she barely noticed Aborn climbing down from his saddle and rushed to Meraxia's side to catch Amelisa. Are you all right? He asked, holding her close. I am all right, she remarked, letting him hold her in that strange way that humans did when they liked each other. You saved me. She saved you, Aborn nodded to Vagar. I just pointed her in the right direction. Damn right I saved you too, Vagar remarked, swishing her tail in a combination of smugness and irritation. We did it'd win though. Amelisa glanced toward the field around the field at the broken bodies all around them. At great cost. Aborn grimaced, though their butcher's bill was significantly higher than ours. A sudden blast of sadness hit Vagar as he glanced toward the bodies of Balon and Kyra, one broken and floating in the river, the other headless and even more crushed by the impact of her landing. They were once my friends, she thought, closing her eyes. I killed Aphrodite and Helios against my will, but this was my decision. To the capital, then, Amelisa asked, glancing toward the south. Yes, Aborn nodded. Will it be Thanatos and Hysteria next? Vagar wondered as she followed her rider's gazes toward the south. Will I kill all my former friends before the end? Neph, will you read to the end?
Yeah, sure. Aloria struggled against the storm, Mela's screams of pain mingling with the sounds of thunder. You did well, the voice whispered in her ear. The world rocked, and her mind went blank as the black storm clouds showed above. Open, grassy plains were replaced by a wide desert. Melis dropped towards the dunes, desperately trying to prevent herself from slamming into the ground. Bodies fused with pain and water, Solaria's eyes flickered open, the waves of the river drifting back and forth over her. Arms aching, she pushed herself up, noticing absently that she'd hung on to judgment the whole time. With a grimace, she started dragging herself on the grass, fighting through the pain. After several hours of crawling on her stomach, or stumbling shaky with her sword as a crutch, she found a farmstead with what looked like a number of horses. As soon as she got to the open barn, the farmhand on duty yelled in surprise, likely at the sight of a bedraggled, wounded, silver-haired woman with a large sword as support. I need a horse, she said firmly, and I need it now.
And that's the end.
Talking dragons.
Fun. I liked this a lot. Vagar is one of my favorite characters.
I'm not particularly
some-
good with names. I'm going to need a spreadsheet to balance out who is who.
There was some pretty cool fatalities in that one. As
Yeah,
well as I
it
like the
was.
idea of the charred body with the sword. The imagery for that was really well done.
Yeah, it was. It made me cringe, though. But because, barbecued person makes me cringe.
Barbecued person is delicious. How dare you?
Yeah,
Cannibal!
but long pork is actually pretty healthy. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
gotta
yeah,
watch
yeah.
that barbecue Korean. That gets really stale.
Look, I try to avoid Korean because unlike the Japanese, their muscle fiber isn't that good.
Yeah.
Really stringy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you get them young. When they're
Yeah.
young, they're nice and tender.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you all for reading. I'm very glad that you enjoyed it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I had to say, Carl did a really good job. Do
Yeah,
you
he
do
did.
do you do what's called audiobooks like as a profession, like as a side thing?
Not
Because you
yet.
definitely got the voice for it. Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
you
I
and
have been-
Yokai
I've
and
been
Drake.
looking at this
too.
website, LibriVox, that does public domain audiobooks. I get a lot of good stuff from there. And unfortunately, all the good stuff has been taken. But there, every now and again, there might be some small
Gun stuff hasn't been taken yet. Gun stuff is good.
public domain audiobooks.
Ah.
So, stuff that has been published before 1923 in America. And it's been
America.
1923 for a while because Disney keeps pushing the date back.
Oh
Thanks,
God, that's one of
Disney.
the reasons why I hate Disney. Ugh.
Filthy Disnoids.
Why some of Lovecraft's works are still not in the public domain.
Wait, Lovecraft's works aren't in the public domain. What?
Half of
Some
his
of them
are,
are,
half
like
of
the
his
ones after
works
his
aren't.
death.
Oh yeah, the ones after his death.
Well, the ones after his death are less than 100 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I think it's like Death of the Author plus 70 years is one of the standards,
Mm-hmm.
and they really need to
Yeah.
standardize.
Yeah. So
I thought it was 100 years, not 70.
yeah.
I've heard both actually.
Okay. So I guess it just depends.
Yeah, there was actually there was a moment in
Yeah.
time when Happy Birthday was still under copyright. I think it was up until 2015.
Oh, the Happy
What?
Birthday song.
Yeah, the Happy Birthday song was under copyright, and it's older than the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's older than the Planets, Gustav Holst. It's older than Richard Strauss's Also Sprach Zarathustra, and all of those were well into the public domain by the time Happy Birthday was finally released.
What?
Wow.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is
Who owned
ridiculous.
it?
I don't know. But that's the reason why, in television series, what they always sing for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow" instead of "Happy Birthday."
Well, now
If they
we'll
sang
get
Happy
to
Birthday,
hear
they would have to
the
give someone
birthday
money.
song on that stuff then.
I always
you can
one,
tell
you
so many
put
movies and shows are gonna say sing Happy Birthday just because they can.
Yeah, they're all going to do that now.
Happy birthday, dear Johnny. Sorry your parents got shot.
Nice. Thank you.
No, wait, no, it's
Slap. My parents are dead.
darkness.
No
parents.
But yeah, did you feel like the battle progressed like in a logical way? That like and that there was like a lot of like what did you think of like the battle itself?
I had a couple of thoughts about the ballistas in this story, because there are ballistas and there are dragons. And the first thought I had, what if you put a ballista or multiple ballistas on a dragon?
My guess was that
Well, the first thing that
ballistas
would
would be
happen would probably
kinda
be the dragon would be able to take off, because that's a lot of heavy equipment.
Yeah,
This
a
is
ballista
great.
Reloading is going to be like reloading is going to be difficult.
Yeah,
especially
pain.
when
it's like
Yeah.
a dragon at that point. It'd be like a flying tank, and you'd need a team to like reload a
Unless it's-
ballista.
unless maybe it's like a specialized dragon that's specific for terrestrial life and not flying, maybe. But if it's
Like
a
a
flying
drake?
dragon, no.
Yeah, that was my other thought.
Basically,
It's
like a living tank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we were
Kinda like a
showing
dragon.
how,
like an ankylosaur-like dragon.
Mm.
yeah, Dunn was saying like how occasionally like dragons would get shot in the wings. What if there was this really old dragon that was really battle worn and ancient, and its wings had got shot out, but it can still be used to pull back the draw weight of a ballista that's like 3 times the normal size, and it's got like tons of
Oh.
bolts like shackles to it, like a bolt shotgun. You could just launch that
Nice.
sucker into the air and throw 20 bolts in a dragon's direction. Dodge that.
Well, what I'm also
Okay.
thinking is that another thing that could be done is that if they were able to design something with the ballista where you could put it on the stomach of a dragon and have
Yeah,
it just be
something
like
like
a one shot kind of thing. Like if two dragons are fighting,
Yeah,
one
you're only
kind of
gonna
like
need-
twist its body, and then the ballista just kind of flies out from below, so it's like a sneak attack kind of.
I was actually
Yeah, my thought
looking
was
into
like,
this for a book I was trying to outline for a while, and I came up with the idea that the most probably as you get larger, as the dragon gets larger, you do come into a law of diminishing returns. You know,
Yeah.
that's as we saw like the in history, the largest artillery piece in the world, the Big Bertha, which was brought up by the Nazis for the siege of Odessa, and it was a white elephant. It was more trouble than it was worth. It pulled resources away. So generally speaking, the smaller, more agile dragons would probably have a lot more effect. And I think I came up with the thing that would the role that dragons would probably fit best into was a dive bomber. You know, just having like a fleet of small dragons that small enough to be agile, but just big enough to carry like a load, like maybe like a bag of some flammable liquid, and they would basically deliver it onto troops or onto command positions or supply depots with pinpoint accuracy.
I think the
And
one
they'd
thing
be able to light the load too, because dragonfire.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
The thing with I would say another thing similar to Big Bertha would be stuff like the Bismarck or the Yamato is that with ships and stuff, you always have the worry of like them getting damaged and them being well beyond repair. Although the dragons definitely always have the advantage of, well, usually when they're bigger, they're a lot more tougher. So to a degree, dragons in some kind of logic can circumvent the idea of being too big and diminishing returns to a degree, of course. It would be interesting to see if Dunn did write a scenario where like one massive dragon takes on like a fleet of much smaller dragons.
I love
I'd
how we're
say-
calling them fleets now.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd
we could make
say,
another term that instead of like a fleet or not even.
And
I think I
I know
called
that
them
Chris-
in my book I was working on. I called them storms, a storm of dragons.
Yeah, that's a
Chris-
good term for that actually, because
discussion topic: dragons in warfare.
Dragons and Warfare.
Yes, yes.
I would
yes,
even say
yes.
like my own quote unquote dragons in
Yeah,
my story
like-
function completely differently to Dunn's dragons, where because
And
mine don't
my
even have
dragon.
wings, because mine are
Yeah.
essentially like grounded dinosaurs, but they still have fire, so they're essentially
Yeah.
like walking tanks of sorts, just sort of walking past structures over them and just breathing fire.
I
Mine
would
are sort of
say,
scaly,
Fireflies.
yeah, I would say that Vagar is on the very line of being on the diminishing returns, as we saw with her fighting the smaller dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want a dragon that's very much bigger than Vagar if you're going to be fighting against smaller dragons.
It's more bigger, yes.
Yeah,
unless you wanted some
Not
really
just bigger,
ostentatious
more
chunk
bigger.
and all.
or something.
Now I'm just imagining like a dragon aircraft carrier, which is just like one dragon with a bunch of other dragons just clinging to it, just so they don't have to use up a bunch of energy to fly.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Oh, that would be fun.
Or
And instead
Or-
of fire, it shoots like steaming hot water, like that one in How to Train Your Dragon in the book.
Mhm.
I think it might have
Or-
been featured in the show.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
See, we're gonna retell the entire history of the Second World War, but with dragons.
that would be awesome.
That would be fun.
Or have
Well,
airships that carry
Yep.
dragons.
Yeah, I was about to say if you're in a fantasy setting where there are airships, you could have like cages that open up below, and the dragons could kind of cling to the cages before like launching themselves downwards, sort of like missiles, and then just
Yeah.
flying back up.
Or maybe
Ooh,
something
Babylon
like
5
an
thing.
aircraft carrier.
No, Wise Wolf, I will not stop sounding like your friend.
Yeah, you sound kind of like sound like Cool Man 89 from I believe it's Anomaly Inc. streams. You sound almost exactly alike.
Oh shit.
Oh no,
I've also
Ooh.
people have also said I sound like Confused Matthew.
What's it called?
No, you do not sound
Um,
like Confused Matthew. Yeah, that's
I've been told that.
they are wrong. they're wrong.
Done. Another idea for dragons is what's it called? If you're using an airship, this Drake. You know the scene in Gundam Unicorn where they have the Zaku sniper that's in the
How much-
Fat Man sideways. Like you know what scene I'm talking about?
No, I'm not familiar with Unicorn.
Okay, so there's like this one scene where there's a Zaku, the ship that's carrying it, a fat uncle is sideways while the Zaku's sniping things from above. You could have an airship that's tilted, or even then have a area below that a dragon can cling to, and if they can concentrate their fire in different ways to produce different results, you could have essentially a dragon sniper from above, and not have it use all its energy flying, but just have it essentially just standing there using its fire the entire time.
What
Oh,
if
wow.
you had sort of like a dragon palanquin where you have this airborne platform that's lifted up by about like 4 dragons, one for each corner, and they take off, and it's basically a flying boat.
Mm-hmm. Or if there was what's it called? You go past diminishing returns and you just have a dragon that's been around for so long, it's practically strong enough to take anything. Like it's so large that its membranes are so thick. It's not that ballistas. You need to have a ballista so large. It essentially defeats the idea of diminishing returns altogether for a creature.
Yeah. And well, I brought up aircraft carriers. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
That started
now
us on this journey.
now I have an idea for a Dragon Riders series. God damn it.
Oh
Well,
no,
maybe
definitely.
different kinds of dragons have different roles. If there are different kinds of dragons in your
Yeah,
story.
that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking.
What if the dragon is old enough to be the general, the strategist?
Yeah, everyone's talking about using dragons in a brute force action. You know, dragons are good for other things too. They're
Yeah.
wise.
They're
They have a lot of
smart.
gold, so they're very good at organizing the financial things. And of course, fire isn't just good for killing people; they could also be used to forge elements
Mhm.
together.
Yep.
Cook.
And,
Their fire could have special properties that make weapons stronger or give them certain types of.
Yep.
Temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also,
of course,
dragons are kind of
when
like
they fly around. They could always get do reconnaissance. I mean, it's really just limiting to them. To
Yeah, they don't just
simply
have
in a
to be
combat role.
offensive.
yeah. They also like
Dragons are
literally.
very, very versatile and marvelous creatures.
Yeah.
And we should
Maybe the
treat
dragon
them like
could have a
horses.
Thagamizer. That'd be
Mhm.
cool.
Dragons could also be like they could work as they'd be really good for preparing fortresses and sieges because if they need to clear out areas to create perimeters, they could just use their fire to burn down forests, melt stuff. Dragons are good landscapers too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Or
are.
maybe they could use their lightning.
Dragons are the master race.
Lightning
Dragons
spitting
will,
dragons.
will take over the world and will rule everybody, and they will put humans in camps.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
science
Yeah.
fiction. It almost happens.
I, for one,
Yeah,
welcome our
put-
dragon
put a-
overlords.
Yeah,
You know, maybe we should make dragons and their versatility a topic to discuss a
Yeah,
different day.
that'll be-
'Cause I
that'll
think
be-
we're
and-
getting
and-
carried
and the-
away.
Yeah.
And the
Writing
ovens
exercise.
in the camps can be dragon fire ovens.
Yeah, I like it.
Holy smug!
So,
Yeah,
so
I'm
I
all
did have I guess I did have one more question. Like, there were kind of a lot of characters in this particular fight. But like, do you feel like they were like clearly defined as at least as people, and like that you were like
Yes.
invested in?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Well,
was.
it seems like this is the third chapter in the book so far, so there's probably a bit more that we're not seeing here. They mention stuff that happened, like their mates being killed and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
and killing someone else against their will. So that's one thing I mentioned. And and is this supposed to be there? I looked at the beginning of it. There's 2 other books in this series. Is this meant to be a sequel or is it a prequel?
It's a third book.
What?
It's a third. It's a short novella that I'm gonna put out between before the third Dragonlord book comes out.
Okay. And have these characters appeared before in the series?
Yes, they have. They've been present for the past 3 books. And they basically, this is kind of like, I actually kind of noticed that Shire and Balon were not in the third book since I didn't really have a place for them, and I realized I need to find a way to get rid of them. So I decided to do this in order to kind of like plug up that little plot hole. Yeah, that particular.
Wrote yourself into a corner, kid, and you gotta dig your way out.
So, you have chosen death.
Indeed.
So you have chosen death.
Pretty much, yeah.
You underestimate my power.
Don't
Yeah.
try it.
Don't try it.
Yeah, I thought that a lot of the stuff, that the beef between Vagar and Balon is from book 2. How it happens will be up to you. The book is out on Amazon right now. Plug.
Plug.
I did
Gotta make
notice
it
from
make it rain. Make it rain with plugs, man.
Okay, Carl?
I did notice from a more of a technical standpoint, you did repeat a couple of phrases, not just. There was in the workplace, in the parts that I read, I did notice you used "thinking quickly" a couple times, and there's probably a couple more phrase template repetitions in there. That's something that a lot of times my editors tell me to look out for, because that can cause your writing to sort of feel
samey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of I rushed this one. I wrote like about like 6,000 words of this last night. As I was like getting ready, because I needed to finish it before the stream. So I pretty much wrote most of this in a day. So I'll go back and edit it.
Well, I know that I can write a couple thousand words in a few hours, so it's not that hard to do. As long as you're motivated, you can get who knows how many words in a day.
I remember I spent an entire night writing a story treatment.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was some good productive value there.
Yep.
Well,
But we should totally do a dragon writing exercise.
Yeah. Yes.
I currently have like 5 books right now of Dragonlord, so
exactly why we should. So
yes, that's exactly why.
He's the Lord Captain Commander of Dragons.
Well, like I have this is part of I was kind of debating like whether or not to make this a short story or novella, and I realized that kind of like based on the length it had to be a novella, but I just need to get it up to the 17,000 word mark. Because I wanted to kind of clear this little thing up, but I also wanted to kind of have enough of a like basis for like what's going to happen in the future. So I decided to, because there are 2 separate kingdoms where there once was one united empire, I decided that this was kind of the best way to kind of explain that, so I can kind of like the reader can kind of go from Blood of the Dragon to the first Dragon Strife, then to War of the Dragons. Yep. That was kind of my idea, since like I just realized there are some gaps in this I need to fill in, so so the reader aren't asking, well, where's Poochie?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for that really, really long segment and bearing through it. I very much appreciated you reading it, and sorry for monopolizing so much of your time. And I need to give you guys more time, since I take up a lot of it with mine, because they're really long.
Oh, your stream.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, I have an issue with writing stuff under 2,000 words for some retarded reason.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I just can't do it. I mean, I've done it for the writing exercises with the specific word counts, but I always find that I write more than that. At least to start with.
Yeah, maybe I'll up it to like not 2,000 words, but you get like 20 like 30 or so 20 to 30 minutes, and kind of there's like and mine was fairly long. I think it was like, how long was it? Like 30 minutes or so.
About that.
Yeah.
Also,
Alrighty.
we got one meme in the chat.
Oh, lovely. Revenge of the Gigans. Oh, great. Okay. Alrighty. Well, if that's all for today, I have to say one final thing, and that is